Hello, welcome to the Augmentation of Man with Kent and Renee Miller. And we are bringing you the future. Today
is avoiding self-conflict.
And we're going to try something new. We're going to leave out the music. Let us know if you like the music on the intro and the outro or you don't like it.
Okay, so we're going to define, because we've heard a lot of different definitions of self-conflict.
First of all, what are we going to be talking about today?
Aligning to the higher self. You think self-conflict, aligning to higher self. But
so how do we do that?
First, we've got to define the terms that we're going to use, because when I said, we've heard many definitions. So we're going to define what self-conflict actually means.
And this is a lesson that was given to us by ancients who are ancient teachers of the Creator. Kent receives these lessons while he's in a deep meditation. And so we have to first understand what the higher self is and what self-conflict is. And so we're going to define those.
Yeah, that has to be defined
first
before we even start.
So the definition of the higher self is that it is a part of the soul that guides a learning process. It is both the receiver and the messenger of consciousness and the source of the communication with all that is, meaning everything in creation. So through our higher self, we can communicate with other beings, spiritual and physical, and receive information to expand our consciousness. It is, the higher self is the eternal part of our beingness. That is part of the soul that is eternal. And it is larger than our physical self. So the higher self determines cause and effect, meaning it lines up events for learning purposes. It's dictating, it's kind of like the puppet master, and the physical self is the puppet. It's dictating our course, and it's all about the learning. And it is what determines the karma, which would be the two sides, being able to experience both sides so that you can see a broader perspective. The spiritual communication takes place first between the higher self, and then that interfaces with the physical self.
Okay, you defined the higher self. Now we have to define self-conflict. And that is the physical self is acting in opposition of the higher self. That's a conflict. The physical self is not listening to the inner guidance given to the self, and teachings within the higher self do not come through. You don't listen to any of that. So that's the difference between the two.
And so the higher self is talking to us. There's inner chatter going on, and we've been trained to turn it off. We've been trained to shut it down and not listen to it.
Yeah, our parents told us don't listen to these things. So anyhow.
And society, it's a part of our culture, but also I think, you know, there's a difference between our mind racing, thinking about what I have to do today and all our worries about things in the future or things of the past, and the communication that is coming from within, which is definitely different than the worries in the everyday monkey mind, as people
So this lesson started when Renee repeated a prediction that we got to a friend, and you can go ahead and explain it about the event was a coming earth change, but explain that.
So I had opened up to a friend about a prediction that we had received. We've received many predictions, but this was a particular earth event. And she just respectfully said, well, I just, that doesn't resonate with me. And inside, I felt this instant inner reaction. And so obviously the ego was involved and entangled in this. And yet I was trying to cover it up. So a little while later, the three of us, the friend and Kent and I, had a meditation. And immediately what came through, the guide could see through it. And what he was saying is that I was casting off this vibration, and it was circulating in the room that reflected this character assassination that I actually was imposing upon myself. And he said that humans are really good at doing that. So what we have to do is to move away from that feeling of the character, our own character related to ego. And even though it's hard to do it, you're programmed, and this has been occurring all through your life. It's hard to do it even when you're aware of it. But the guide is telling us that there becomes an addiction to this self-annihilation when we feel like our character has been attacked because somebody does not believe in the same way that we believe.
It's attacking the self.
And we're imposing it on ourselves.
Yeah, and we conflict with ourself and the higher self all the time. And we don't even know our true purpose here because we're constantly in conflict. So to realize the higher self, realize the true value of higher self. So what do we do? How do we do that?
So we have to understand the worth of the higher self is all in the levels of understanding and the wisdom that we carry. So when we pass from this life, the only thing we take with us is the lessons that we've learned and the wisdom we've gained. That's the true value. That is what is embedded in the soul and added to the sum total of all lifetimes and all learning experiences.
It's making our decisions come together, doing our decisions from direction of the higher self rather than the self. And that might be the gut feeling, the higher self, as part of the gut
So you're
feeling.
saying, to start listening to that.
Yeah, you make the decision and you say, I have a gut feeling that's not correct. I have a gut feeling I should make this other decision. Mm-hmm. Listen to your gut feeling as part of the higher self.
It's the part of the guidance of the higher self. And so also when you meditate, at first you want to clear the mind of the physical mental chatter of the everyday life. But then once you've cleared that, you want to listen to that. You'll hear words, you'll hear phrases, you'll hear sentences in your mind that clearly are not what you were thinking about. And those are that's the inner communication that you want to be listening to, because that's the higher self that starts to shed light on certain things going on in your life, certain events going on in your life, so that it can expand your understanding of that event.
Yeah, this is understanding wisdom and it's understanding wisdom and understanding. And once you begin to understand these things that you're being told, now you will not be given more than what you can understand, period. Mm-hmm. So then you will be open a whole new parameter, and you won't believe what you begin to understand. And I know I've used that word a lot in this sentence, but how else can I say it's the essentials of wisdom and understanding?
So what we need to understand is that primarily the higher self and the soul is a vast trove of understanding and wisdom. Mm-hmm. It's the consciousness. All of creation was designed to expand consciousness of all beings. And so when we understand that that's the purpose of creation, that's the purpose of life, we are living on an experiential learning field. We're here to learn about other things in a physical form. And so it's all about the learning. It's all about the expanding consciousness, even on this earth. And so when we turn within and we start listening to that inner voice, and we start listening to our feelings, like the gut feeling, and following that, that's going to help us to align to the direction of the higher self. And then we won't be in conflict with the higher self. We'll be working in coordinated movements
the
with
inner voice, higher self.
Yes.
And we will be given small amounts of information that we can digest and that we understand. We will not be given more than we can understand.
Right.
Okay. And you only want that.
And we've also been told that this is not about wants. In recent times, we've learned a lot about vibration and associated with attracting things into our lives, but it's not about the materialism. This materialism and the greed and the need to acquire a lot of stuff is distracting us from our true spiritual path. It is interfering with our connection to the higher self.
Well, once extinguishes our ability to understand the higher self, because it will, like you said, interfere.
Our minds
what we're supposed to really learn.
Yeah, because our minds are preoccupied with what I want to buy, what I want to acquire. And so what happens is that when and so when you start to understand that it's the importance is the expanding consciousness, then that the desire to buy and acquire more material wealth is going to cause character assassination within, because then we know the difference. We know that we should be expanding our consciousness and not be focused on buying stuff.
Well, that's not just material things, but saying, "Oh, I want a pretty girl that's thin and all this different things that I want." But a girl that has a good heart and will take care of me and is just mildly good looking or mildly attractive, or maybe not attractive, but the heart is in the right place. So it's like asking for a Corvette to get from point A to point B, and a Volkswagen ends up in your lap, and you don't want that. The object is to get from point A to point B, not what you drive to get there.
Okay. So how do we get there? It's through quiet contemplation, reflection on events in our lives. And that's personal, it can be local, it can be global events. It's about meditating, clearing the mind of the worldly chatter, and listening to the inner voice that is communicating a higher wisdom and understanding.
You gotta let the higher self out.
And it takes redundancy, repetition, to learn how to do this and to become good at receiving. But this is where we're headed as a human race. And there's changes that are on the horizon that's going to enable this to happen much easier than it has been in the recent past.
We take spiritual growth in terms of how long it will take to get spiritual growth, but how difficult it will be. Spiritual growth is I think if you like reading, read Fool's Crow, a Sioux native medicine man, and it's a story of his life, and you will understand more about the spirit and the spiritual growth. And it takes a long time to get to understand the spirits and what they can offer. You just don't get it in the click of an eye.
And so we need to start preparing for this period of time when we will be receiving communication on a higher level and be able to learn how to receive communication from the higher self. And from there, it starts to expand out to receiving communication from other beings, because that communication occurs between the higher self and the other being. And then because the physical self interfaces with the higher self, then the higher self is giving the physical self that information.
To get spiritual growth, first of all, you have to become humble.
Mm-hmm.
And many people say, well, I'm humble. Well, you're only humble in your own mind. Ask your friends, are you humble? Yeah, they will tell you if they're honest with you. And get rid.
Why don't you tell them about your story?
Well, when I first went in, they said, we're not going to speak to you. You're not humble. And I said, I'm not humble. I was an investigator and I was expert witness for the courts. So I was not humble. But I said, well, how do I become humble? I said, learn how. First of all, you got to get rid of your ego.
So how did you do that?
Well,
when you presented in meditation and you presented yourself.
I let my ego go.
But you said that you kneeled down in your mind.
I kneeled down in my mind. I kneeled down and I gave thanks. And I said, my life is now in your hands, the Creator. I told the Creator, I want to be a tool in your toolbox. I want to do what you want me to do. And when you do that, you have to be willing to let everything go and follow the direction. And a lot of people say, well, how can you do that?
Instead of trying to dictate it yourself. Yeah, because it doesn't work otherwise. People say,
how can you do that? How can you just follow this path? I said, because I said I would. And you've got to keep your word on that.
And sometimes you need a wife to keep you on track too.
Yeah. But yeah, you got to manage. You got to let the ego go. The ego cannot stand in your way, and it has stood in the way many times of my learning. And then clear your mind when you go to do meditation. You got to clear your mind of all the things that you worry about, all the things that happened in the past, all the things you think is going to happen in the future. All those things have to be cleared.
And then you start listening.
Yeah, and don't be afraid what you hear about yourself. That's a lot of people all of a sudden hear something about themselves and their ego pops back. No, that can't be right, or whatever. Don't be afraid to learn about the self, because you are only here temporarily on this earth. And this body is only a vessel to hold your spirit while you're here.
I want to add too is that when I have been doing my own meditations and trying to integrate with the higher self, and my higher self told me, when I asked why is this taking so long, and my higher self said, you're afraid. So I had many, many dreams of having this huge horse in my presence. And I was always afraid of this horse. I was afraid the horse was going to step on me. I was afraid the horse was so massive that if I was too close to the horse, I was going to be injured. And I came to realize that the horse was my animal totem. It was representation of my higher self. And so to translate that the higher self is much bigger and much more powerful than this physical expression. This is just a fraction of who we are as a soul. And so many times we have this fear of associated with the higher self because it feels so much more powerful, so much bigger. And we have to come to understand that that's our friend. As in one dream I had, the horse was in the house, and I was afraid because it was so enormous. And the horse got down on the floor and started rolling around, scratching its back, and then looking at me like, come lay down on the floor with me. I'm not going to hurt you. And so we have to understand that the higher self is our friend. It is ourselves. It's the complete expression of combined, with the entirety of the soul. It is all of what we are in the spiritual realm. So don't be afraid of it.
And there are no limits to what we can understand. There are no limits within our own mind, that learning from the higher self. So we can't close that off. So we have lessons from our past. We got to look at and put
Things
more
that
value
we don't
on
like.
things we don't like. Put value on our future.
But release the past. We can look at it
because it's all based on perception.
Yes, it's they're always associated with regret or guilt when we carry these things around with us that weigh us down. But once we look at it and realize it's not about the judgment, it's about the learning that we gained. Because were you able to repeat it today, or have those choices today, you would make a different decision because you've learned from it. So we make decisions and choices based on the understanding we have at that time. And as we move through these events, we come to realize, wow, that wasn't a very good decision, but we've learned in the process some very valuable lessons that the soul is accumulating. And in that, then we will not choose the same choices again in the future because we have learned from it. So don't feel guilty, don't feel bad about our choices, but rejoice in that it has made us a wiser person for it. And then when we start to communicate with other beings, then we start to really expand our consciousness, but we have to let go of all that old stuff first.
You've got to begin what we talked about early on to be able to learn from the higher self and learn from entities outside of Earth here, because they're not going to talk to you if you don't listen. They have also good learning, good lessons to learn, and good knowledge. We are only kindergartens in the universal thought of things. And we have to expand our understanding of what is around us and what could develop our path in front of us.
And that there is no limit to our growth in understanding and our growth in consciousness. So as soon as we let go of all these concerns that we have about past events, then we can exponentially move forward and really expand our consciousness in the process.
Yeah, so once you begin to get this understanding and some wisdom that you understand, this can provide a lot of answers to a lot of things that you're looking for. And you'll be surprised the answers you'll get. And you follow those answers.
Yeah, it does. Learn. It really helps you to understand not only spiritual concepts, but your own life and things that have happened in your own life. Yeah. And it helps you to understand who you are at the soul level.
And understand the truth of why things happen.
Yes.
Not a perception of why you think it happened.
Without judgment.
Yeah.
So we hope that this will help you in your life to move out of the self-judgment and the self-conflict, and help you to start to integrate with your higher self and the reason why you are here on this earth at this time. And so peace be with you on your journey to enlightenment. Thank you for joining us. Take care. Have a good day.